coffee, wine, whatever you guys have in your hands. Would love to see your faces because I like to make a very interactive session here. So it's up to you if you can turn on your camera, and if you're in a comfortable space, please go ahead, do that. We're going to do a Q&A after 30 minutes. We've got two very interesting speakers with us tonight. For your Q&A, you can sequentially raise your hands, and I can, of course, unmute yourself. I'm Paridhi, co-founder of MBA and Beyond, and we are sitting together here with a vision of empowering you for your MBA candidature by getting you the insights from students and alums of some of the top business schools. That's what we do every week. Our vision at MBA and Beyond is to collectively use technology and community as the most powerful tool to empower candidates go to business schools with a purpose. So our frameworks defined by using AI help you write the best applications out there, getting the mentorship from alums of some of the top business schools like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, consultants, FANG, or social entrepreneurs across the globe, Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who've been alums of some of the top schools. And they have come together to, of course, help candidates get into some of the top schools of the world. We've got two very interesting speakers with us tonight who are going to be joining in a few seconds. Until then, I would interestingly want to know a little bit about you guys. So I want to understand where are we at before we can jump onto our introductions of our speakers. I want to understand, what do you think about what's the most fun part of your MBA application journey? And we've got Slido up on the screen. So you can, if you're connected from your laptop, you can scan the QR code with your phone. If you're connected on your phone, why don't you go ahead on slido.com and key in 3779486 and help us understand what you think, according to you, is the most fun part of your MBA application journey. We're waiting for a couple of more candidates to join, and while they do it, that's why we are just getting us to know each other better. All right, so half of them. All right, application writing is something that candidates enjoy the most, and GMAT I'm gathering, or GRE I'm gathering, is what nobody likes. Is that what it means? But interesting. Go ahead, guys. Would love to know your 2 cents. Would love to know what you think about this. There are some people who like GMAT, GRE preparation as well. That's really good. Meanwhile, while we're at it and while you're helping us answer, we've gotten 16 of us who've joined. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers tonight, and of course, hand over the mics to them to introduce a little about themselves in a little more elaboration. But we've got Inderpreet with us. He's a senior military veteran who's also an MIT Sloan MBA, and he brings more than 2 decades of experience in strategy, consulting, operations, and whatnot. So Inderpreet, welcome to the session, and I'd love you to introduce yourself to the audience tonight.
Thank you so much, Paridhi. It's always an honor to be here and to interact with such a great audience. As Paridhi has mentioned, I'm a military veteran. I go by IP is a better version of my name, more user-friendly, as people call it. So I spent about 2.5 decades in the military. I took early retirement last year as a colonel and decided to pursue a career in the corporate world. In the military, over the last about 10 to 12 years, I had mostly been doing something very similar to consulting, where we were helping various global militaries and countries come over some of their biggest challenges by providing certain technology solutions or strategy solutions, or just typically helping them build up capability. And this kind of experience was very relevant to the corporate world, especially in the consulting business. And when I thought of transitioning, this was my first career choice post-military to get into consulting, because the skill sets that I brought from the military were very relevant to this world. So before I did that, I thought I must get a better understanding of how the business world works. One understands business from a very different perspective in the military, because in the military, you're only, poofing off money and ensuring that it is poofed off in a good manner. There is a lot of auditing and accounting involved, but you really do not think on the profit side of revenue generation and a lot that goes into that area. So to build up my understanding of the financial side of things, also to understand the business environment in the US, where I really wanted to transition and stay after my military life, I thought a 1-year MBA program was best for me. And I started looking for various programs like most of you. This journey started during the pandemic when all of us had a lot of time at home. So after a lot of research, I shortlisted a couple of programs. And because of work schedule, I could finally only apply for one school, that was MIT Sloan. I don't know whether I got really lucky or I had a very strong profile and I got an admit. I joined the program last year in June and I graduated this year in June. And immediately after that, I joined a boutique consulting firm, which does a very specific niche kind of strategy consulting in the public space. I've already started working with them. The work is extremely interesting, something I really wanted to do. And I do bring a lot of my military experience into this new role. There are a lot of leadership requirements that I fulfill with them, a lot of strategy building, a lot of operations optimization work that I do. So I find it very interesting. On the way, when I was doing that, a lot of people would approach me, especially veterans or non-traditional candidates, through LinkedIn or through friends and family circle, to help them out, to guide them and advise them. In the military also, I've done a lot of mentoring. I've been a lecturer or an instructor in 2 of our premier training establishments. So teaching, mentoring, advising comes very naturally to me. And I started doing this as a side gig thing. And I really enjoy helping people understand how they connect their past with their future and how a program like an MBA or a master's would fit in, whether it is really needed, not needed. And in most cases, non-traditional candidates also need help to understand the industry better, to find a very good link between what they've done in the past and going forward, how do they exploit those skill sets and not just let them go waste. So that's where I come in. I really enjoy this work. And I'm happy to be on this forum, take on all the questions that you have. If you run out of time, you can always reach out through other means. And thank you so much. I look forward to this session eagerly.
Thanks a lot, IP. And that was a very good introduction. And thanks for warming up the audience to basically invite them and ask any questions that you guys have. So guys and girls, please raise your hands or maybe drop your questions in the chat box. Next on the card is Supriya. Supriya is like, I mean, I'm going to fall short of words for her as well. She's a 4-day fellow. She's at EASA. She's been a fashion model. She's been in investments. So she's beauty with brains, as you can see right now. I'm going to, of course, invite her to introduce herself more than me tagging and giving that, a very non-feminist sentence to it. But yes, please, Supriya, go ahead. You are someone who's going to, of course, rule the world. Go ahead. And please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pardeep, for such a sweet introduction. So hi, everyone. I am Supriya. I actually was a chartered accountant before this, worked in finance all my life, was a chartered accountant, worked in auditing, taxation, due diligence, in valuation with Deloitte, and then was an investment manager for the longest time with Dara Shaw. So I was managing provident funds of large corporate clients. But alongside, I also was a fashion model, which was kind of my childhood dream. And it stemmed from a little bit of insecurities of being bullied as a child for my weight and complexion, but then turned out to be like using your insecurities for good, turned out to be for good for me. So I was both a fashion model and into finance. And this is where my life felt a little conflicted. I wanted to work at the intersection of both of the things. And I loved the strategy part of whatever projects that I had received so far in my life. And that's why I decided to get into strategy. And actually, I was one of the candidates with MBA and beyond. They helped me so much in respecting what I actually love about doing my job. MBA applications make you like significantly introspect about your life. So that's what I did, applied with the mindset of working at the intersection of fashion, finance, and strategy. Currently interning at Mango in sustainability and strategy, thankfully. So that's a bit about me. And I came to this end of MBA and beyond on the other side, because I see the potential, like what changed, like the kind of value addition that was brought to my profile. And on top of that, I love giving back to community. I was working with I was working with a lot of NGOs, especially in education sectors. And I also had my own NGO. So it's my way of giving back.
Thanks a lot, Supriya, and welcome to the forum tonight. Both of you are going to be a great team, I'm 100% sure. Guys, you have any questions, you can drop it. Otherwise, I'm going to start with the questions that I have. And that's going to take space and time. So before we do that, let me build upon what Supriya just said. She moved from one side to the other side. MBA and Beyond works on model of inclusive capitalism. I'm not sure if you all are aware of how that works. So basically, we are making the whole system build upon a community-based model where, let's say, if you worked with MBA and Beyond today, and we have a success rate of 93% for top 20 business school, and you make it to some of the top business school, you come on board as a profile expert like Supriya did as soon as you get an admit letter. You work as a profile expert with us by giving back to the community. You're basically helping candidates become smarter and smarter. So we are on an average improving the average intelligence rate of the candidates going to some of the top business schools, because it's being actually fed by the people who've already made it to the business school. So they become our profile experts. Once you land a job, when it's McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Apple, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it now, Spotify, Deezer, either you're a Silicon Valley co-founder, that you're on board after 1 to 2 years of graduating as a consultant. Because we believe in a mentorship model, not just purely from an advisory board of admissions committee, but actual people like you and I who've taken a journey via an MBA and landed ourselves in a space where our future, fellow candidates want to land themselves into, and we have a lot to empower them with. So that's why IP is our consultant right now, and Supriya is our profile expert. You all are welcome to, of course, join MBA and Beyond at any point in time. I know some of you are interested in working with us. So if you've got any questions about our process, MBA and Beyond, your application, your candidacy, please feel free to ask. Before we jump on to anything that you have to ask, I'm going to have to ask one question to IP and Supriya. And there's a question that I just received in my personal message, but I'm going to ask you a question first. What made you think about that MBA was the right step for both of you, and when did it occur to you? Any one of you can go first.
You want to go first?
So this came, this wasn't something which came as a surprise, but this was a realization which started building in about 3 to 4 years in the later stretch of my military career, where I was interacting very extensively with the Indian defense manufacturing base. As you know, the Indian defense manufacturing base is coming up in a large way. There is a lot of impetus by the government to become self-reliant in defense technology and equipment, because we spend a humongous amount of money on buying equipment and technology. So the government was pressing really hard for Indian industry to rise up to the occasion. And I was in an appointment where I would interact very extensively with companies like Reliance, Tata, Ambani's, who were building up their defense manufacturing base. And when I would interact with most of the industry professionals, I realized that there was a gap in my understanding of certain terminologies or concepts that they would talk of. And I would really have to go back and research and then come back prepared to talk to them on the same plane. And going through their profiles on LinkedIn, I realized most of them had MBAs. So I understood that, this is one program which really polishes you. It really throws in those concepts. It really builds your muscle to understand what's happening in the industry. And if I were to survive and I was to thrive in that environment, I really needed to upskill myself. And there was no better way than doing that same program, that same MBA, which really empowers you. But the question was where and which. So that took some more time, a couple of years, to understand the ecosystem, interact with larger number of veterans who had moved out, also understand with students from these, top schools, to understand what is actually happening, what is the curriculum, and what am I as an individual with such a background going to get out of it. So it was a longish process, something which took about 2 years. Luckily, the COVID came in, so one had a lot of time to reach out, seek information, interviews, also speak to various consulting firms like MBA and Beyond and others, and to really come about with a concept or a larger picture of what I wanted. So I think it was a gradual thing for me. It was not my first choice to start with. I was thinking of just, finishing my military career and straight away jumping into the corporate world. But I think better sense prevailed. Some good people advised me, and then I chose this path.
Fair enough. So in summation, it's actually 2 years of a lot of heavy research after the first conception of thought, when you finally arrived at a point that you knew which school and which particular curriculum speaks to you. If I'm summarizing it correctly, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And each one of us, has a different set of priorities, aspirations, choices, family situations, and all that has to come together in your school selection. And for me, it came out beautifully because we were wanting to move to the US. I had spent time here earlier doing a program where I was sponsored by the military. So the family was quite comfortable. And since I wanted to work in the US, the Northern American geography, it made a lot of sense to do a program here, which would create a network for me, which is based out of North America. So there were multiple factors, but these were some of the important factors which helped me really understand where I wanted to go.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And I have a follow-up question on that, which somebody just reached out to me. And guys, you can actually drop it in everyone, like share it with everyone if you're comfortable, because it will help others also get their questions addressed instead of just sending it to me. So Priya, what was yours? Like, when did it come to you, arrive to you, that, hey, I have to start thinking about an MBA, and what was the process after? So yeah, maybe enlighten us.
Mine was also pretty similar, was kind of going gradually. Once I became a chartered accountant, I knew that I need more management skills towards it, because chartered accountancy is very technically oriented. You work in the auditing firms and everything, but it's the more you speak to the leadership people, you realize that there's a gap. And the more I researched about it, the more common factor I found out was MBA. And then when I entered into my investment management job, I was practically dealing with the C-suite of the biggest companies in India. And that's where, when directly speaking to these kind of people, I realized what kind of personality differences are there. And all of them actually give a huge, huge credit to their MBAs, their respective MBAs that they have ever done. So that made it more concrete for me. And I was thinking about it because my job was demanding. I was never eventually starting to get to it. Took advantage of the COVID work from home situation, gave my GMAT, and then started working towards the profile with you guys. And that's how it happened. And actually, I was not even going to apply for that year, but with the COVID, I also met with an accident. I was like, now that I am a little bit not occupied at all, so why don't I actually go ahead with what I wanted to do? So that's how the MBA decision has always been there. Again, the question was about which school, which geography, and all of that. And I think with your GMAT score, you kind of know which bucket do you fall into. Although you can make huge difference with your profile, but you kind of know. And as I was an ambitious person, and I always wanted to target to a good MBA school, and that conflicted me between US and Europe. I didn't narrow myself down to US or Europe. But then one thing helped me is that my siblings were in US, so I decided to choose to Europe because it aligned well with my international experience, which I was really thinking of having. European schools offer much more diversity in terms of international schools, and that's what I went for.
Amazing, Supriya. So as what we can see on the screen as well, like people like application writing the most, while the other parts where we're talking about profile building and research, I wish I would have added that, and it's giving me ideas to frame questions better for the next sessions. I think research should definitely be a part of it. What's your take on that, IP and Supriya? Did you like the research part of it more, or the execution part of it when you were writing the application? And then I'm going to answer the question that came to me just now. When should I start working on my application for round 2? Go ahead.
As a military professional, especially someone who was in the infantry and has been on the border and generally, having seen active service a lot, execution is my bit. I love execution. I think research is what it is. You can keep researching till the cows come home, but the finesse of your entire effort lies in the execution. If the execution isn't perfect or near perfect, you will not stand out, and your chances of getting an admit are pretty low. And when the application goes through someone who's reading applications continuously 24/7, your story really has to stand out, and that is the execution bit. It's not the English. I think it's something more than that. A lot of us feel that, we've studied in convent schools, we've gone to the best colleges, we have a very good command over our language, so we will be able to frame a very good story. That's not the case. Storytelling is a very different art. It's an art and it's not a science. So my personal preference is the writing bit and the storytelling bit. I think that's what my understanding of execution really means in an application process.
And that's a good one. Supriya.
I want the opposite end of it. I love the research part because it allowed me to understand so many perspectives. I think I could narrow down on schools and figure out what I wanted to do more with the research. The more I researched, added introspection to it, the more it always led to confusion, more bigger and bigger confusion. But in the end, it all made sense, and it made sense only because of the research thing I did. And I feel like I learned a lot in the process. I learned different perspectives. I kind of got comfortable with the fact that maybe this journey is not for me. Maybe this journey is for me. It was a different kind of profile. That person did it for some other reason. They had different background. So I don't need to chase somebody else's dream. I need to chase mine, what matters to me. And I think research helped me a lot there. Execution, I feel once I know my story, once I know my brand, it's nice to put things on paper, but I mean, both of the things are amazing part of the application. But for me, research really stood out.
Of course, there has to be a sweet balance, but it's good to know, like we have got people on both sides of the spectrum, one who would enjoy execution while still spend time on research, while the other enjoyed the research part and felt like, oh, now it's easy to put, just things through. So, and we get all those kind of candidates, day in and day out. And the question that I'm going to answer now, and Tarun and everyone, we're going to just take up your questions so shortly after. The question is, when should I start working on my applications if I'm targeting round 2? So my understanding is that round 2 is going to be November through January. If you're targeting European schools, it's going to be somewhere in November, December. If you're targeting US schools, it's going to be somewhere in January. So we are somewhere 3.5 months away from the first few deadlines that you will see for round 2. Now, when should you start? My question will be back to you. What do you mean by starting? So IP did start 2 years prior researching on what are the people thinking about my profile, who should I really connect with, what will I resonate with the curriculum or not, is there a school selection process in place, which kind of schools, which geography, like Supriya talked about, what do I resonate with more. That's a lot of hard work, and that cannot be done in 3 months. 3 months, now you can say, I can write my application. I can execute what IP was talking about if you're ready. And like Supriya said, that's a journey you take right from the conception of the thought. It's an ongoing process. It can happen. It requires a lot of introspection, putting your brand together. And like IP said, it's never ending. It's going to keep on happening. So you cannot say until I'm finally done, I cannot start working on my application too. What you see on my screen right now is Mirror. That's MBA and Beyond's product or steps that we've defined, or a framework, so to say, for you to introspect the best. Now, here, the most detailed or an in-depth part of your journey, or any candidate that takes at MBA and Beyond, is step 3, which is content gathering. This is without even knowing which schools you're targeting, without even knowing what is the story that you're putting out. This is just you introspecting about your own self and your own journey, both professional and personal angle to it. This is going to talk about a lot of stuff like your goals, your strengths, your weaknesses, your achievements, failures, international exposure, extracurriculars, why MBA. And there are a couple of more questions that we are adding to it, which is going to make up your wholesome application, which is going to basically be a building block of any of your application, which Supriya talked about, is going to be your personal brand. Once you've logged that in, that's when school selection comes into picture. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can see all of you also out there and the questions as well. IP and Supriya, do you have anything to add to when should I start? Any more 2 cents before we can take up the questions on the screen?
So, Paridi, that's a very catch-22 kind of a situation. And from my experience, the candidates I've worked with, I feel that non-traditional candidates who are slightly senior take more time because the stakes for them are much higher because, you are transitioning from a particular industry to another industry or from a geography to another geography. You have family responsibilities. So you want to be very sure that you're doing the right thing. So they kind of tend to do a little bit more of research and they want to be very sure. But younger candidates, typically 4-5 years of experience, have their vision very clear in their mind where they're headed. So for them, it's very clear that I want to be in this geography, I want to remain in this industry, and I want to just pivot my function. So I think this is something that I have noticed, although this is not set in stone, it can be the other way around also. But from my perspective, what is most important is do not be in a hurry. Do not rush into your school selection or program selection. This is something which is going to set the trajectory of your future career. You can't be changing your career or your trajectory every 2 years. I keep this analogy to a lot of people that it's like a golf shot. All of those who play golf, they understand that the angle at which the ball is hit is very important. And you're precisely doing that with your research. You're deciding what angle, what direction am I going to head in, and that cannot be short-circuited. You can't think of spending less time. This is the meat of this entire process to set your course. Once the course is set, then there are enough resources to help you get where you want to. But where you have to head, what is your objective, is something that you have to decide. And as I said, senior people tend to delve too much into details. They want to talk to a larger audience. Younger people are very clear in their mind.
Yeah.
That's you appreciating the other side of the spectrum. But yeah, Supriya, do you have any 2 cents to share?
Yeah, I would recommend that it's a unique answer to everyone. You need to analyze where in the journey you are. Basically, I don't think I could have categorized myself into like I need to start my application 2 months early. I needed to figure out what I needed to do for my application. Am I at the stage where I'm just confused about doing an MBA or not doing an MBA? Am I sorted with that? I'm doing an MBA, then in which geography? In which geography, which schools, or is it this that I'm going to target the top 10 school, top 20 schools? I'm open with any kind of geographies. Where do I want to live post MBA? What do I don't want to do post MBA as my job function? Do I want to start for it? Do I have my finances set for it? All of that, you need to figure out for yourself where in this process do you fall. If you have already done your research to figure out where you are, then it basically depends on you. And obviously the MBA consulting firms helps you in the process. So in case you are at the very beginning, I would recommend utilize all the time that you have with the people who have knowledge about this. Speak to your colleagues, speak to the schools that you want to target, to speak to anybody who would have knowledge about it to get you towards that direction faster. And in case you have a set deadline in your mind, then there's no question about it. You have deadlines. You have to start applications. Round 1, round 2 are closing, are very near to them. So my suggestion would be figure out where you are, speak to people, and then that would give you an answer about how much time you should be taking for yourself. Because you need to analyze that it's not just about getting into the school. You need to figure out that school is also a good fit for you. MBA is a big investment. It's a big step in your career, in your life. It will change your life and career trajectory. So it needs to be taken with great severe concern towards it.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to maybe top it up, Supriya, with something that you said in the previous conversation. And this is a good reminder for all of us while we're selecting a geography, a school, or let's say wherever we want to land ourselves into. First of all, you don't have to be too driven by the competition. So don't let the competition, something that Supriya was saying along the similar lines, which we also advise candidates, be your authentic self and don't let the competition drive you. And I can give you an example. Let's say if I know all of you, most of you, 90% of you here want to be management consultants. And this we know for sure. You don't have to, I don't even have to run a poll for that. We know we're going to run it. It's going to be more than 90%. But all of us, we cannot say that out loud in our application. And there's, of course, an authentic self, and there's also an authentic self supported by the right evidence. So find your evidence for the most authentic self that you can present for what you've done so far. You cannot just say that, hey, now I want to completely pivot. That's not what MBA is not a magic wand. It's going to facilitate some of the bits and pieces that you don't have to, of course, bridge the gap that IP also talked about. It's just about identifying what is that gap, and there lies your answer for why MBA, which schools, which geography, and whatnot. Arrive at that answer and you'll have the clarity. Are you ready to start working on your applications? So I'd say start with the gap first. Analyze what's your version 1.0 and 2.0, and what is the distance between them, and what are the key points that you guys would like to accomplish. Prepare a brand for yourself, identify your values, and map them with the values of different business schools. I think now we're ready to start taking questions. We have 30 minutes. So we'll start with Siddharth. Second, we'll move on to Prakhar. I know you've been asking for some time, but your question wasn't here. Siddharth posted first. Oh, actually, you posted first. So go ahead, unmute yourself, Prakhar, please. We'd love to answer your question.
Okay, thanks for it. So can I start the video also if it's possible?
Of course, that's what we all invited all of you to do.
All
Please
right.
go ahead.
So can you see me? Yeah. So my question is, so first of all, thank you for your service, IP. And congratulations to both of you for your achievements. It's amazing to hear, okay? I personally always have wanted to be a part of a community and a brotherhood. It has been like rooted deep into me. So the problem which I'm facing right now is that in my job, I love to do everything, okay? So I work in a startup. So they are like, hey, Prakhar, handle the finances. Finances like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Handle the unit test, Prakhar is going to do it. Handle the coding part in AI or ML, Prakhar is going to do it. So the problem which I am facing is I love to do things, okay? There's a love for building. So, and I'm dog, like you give me a problem, I'll solve it. That will happen. So when people ask me, hey, Prakhar, what's your passion? And the answer comes out is, it's building. So, but building what? And then I don't have an answer because everything I do, I love to do it, or I won't do it at all. So would you guys can help me like find a solution to this? Because since both of you have in a way identified your passions, so some direction, anything would help me a lot.
That's a beautiful question, Prakhar, and I'm sure not just you, it's going to help a lot of candidates here. Go ahead, Supriya, IP, 2 cents.
Prakhar, that is a very good problem to have, by the way. Very few people have this problem that they can do a lot of things, but they can't decide what is the best thing to do. So let me start by saying that is a great problem to have on hand. I would suggest that you should connect to more and more entrepreneurs who have gone through some of the programs which focus a lot on entrepreneurship. I will give you an example of MIT Sloan. MIT Sloan is huge on entrepreneurship. In my class also, while we were very senior mid-level people coming to the program, we had almost 25 to 30% serial entrepreneurs who had started companies, had very amazing exits, and a couple of them even started new companies while they were at MIT. So do some research and try and find out those schools or universities which has a very strong entrepreneurial base, because you will be really at peace in that environment. This is what I can make out. You are fond of building, and do not go with a preconceived idea that I want to only build a company which does this. When you land there, there will be a number of matching events where people will come up and talk about their idea and ask you that if you're interested, come join me and let's build a company. Or you will attend events where there are venture capitalists or investors who have an idea, but they want people to come on board and help them make that idea into a reality. So your skill set is extremely relevant in the entrepreneurial space, where you really understand what entrepreneurship is. You're a hands-on person. You can, roll up your sleeves and get into it. And for me, I think it's very important for you to also visualize, where are you going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Do you want to have your own kind of startup in place, which is likely to go public in 5 years? Or you just want to be working for someone and contributing your best and being just like a chief operations officer or a chief financial officer? A little bit of clarity on that is important. But I think to sum it up, I think you've been bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and don't let it go. You're one of the few lucky people who are genuinely passionate about entrepreneurship. So look for schools which will really give you that environment, that exposure, that network where you will thrive. I hope that answers to some extent.
Oh, it does. It does. It does help a lot. Thank you so much.
I'd also personally like to talk to you and connect you with a few fellow entrepreneur applicants. How did they arrive at this? And so I'll send out an email after this. You can reply. We'll find a common time. Let's have a longer discussion on helping you.
Sure.
By the way, just to add, I'm also someone who's been bitten by that bug. I am working as a side gig with a couple of startups, advising them in the Boston area. I really wanted to start off on my own, but as you see, the economic conditions weren't so good. And with someone who's transitioning, it was too big a risk to be taken. So I thought it was important to stabilize for some time and then, start looking at full-time entrepreneurship. So maybe in a few years, I will go that direction. But as of now, I'm only advising, trying to understand the entire ecosystem. Entrepreneurship is huge, and there is far more than what you can learn sitting on your own and just reading books. You need to be in the right environment to flourish. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
I'm actually enjoying how, like, lately, most of the coffee sessions that we've been doing, there have been so many entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs for that matter joining. And there's so much conversation around it. Sometimes it gives me ideas. We need to start building a community around that. Just like how Prakhar, there were 2 candidates who joined us last coffee as well. And I personally have so many stories to share because I was bitten by the bug back in 2013 and in Boston IP, because I was at Howard Medical School and I just could not picture myself working in the lab for the rest of my life. So I started, ideating. Anyways, long story short, I don't want to digress from the topic that we have. Let's take Siddharth's question and Prakhar will connect. Siddharth, while IP you were talking about economic unpredictability, I think this question is on point, so we can take this one. Given the current economic unpredictability, would it be a wiser choice to wait till the economy stabilizes, specifically from the perspective of post-MBA job opportunities? I'm targeting fall 24 intake in the EU region, particularly Germany, and have an admit from HHL Leipzig. IP, Supriya, do you guys have 2 cents, inputs?
About the economic uncertainty, I mean, the best of the economists in the world are not able to predict what's happening in the market these days. Fed has recently come out with saying that recession is not happening, but everybody is going against that opinion. So there's a lot of discussion going on that is there an impending recession or not. But the economy is not expected to stabilize anytime soon, and that cannot stop you from doing an MBA, in my opinion, because we don't know. There's no set prediction that this year everything will get from this year moving forward, everything will be sorted. So in my opinion, it's good to, since you're targeting anyways during 2024 intake, you will be exiting in 2026. So it's a good time frame for economy to have its own time and for your stars to align to get a good post-MBA job, because the concerns are very valid. The people who graduate during recession tend to typically lag behind other who graduate at a normal time or a booming time. But that this cannot be your deciding factor, in my opinion, because nobody is able to decide the economic situation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just share one stat, not advising you to go for an MBA or against it. But whenever there is a recession, and there's a report by Financial Times, probably you can search for some keywords, you'll find it. Every time there's a recession, the business school competition goes up. And last year it was up by 300%. That's like statistically what we can bring to the paper. The reason for that is recession also puts a lot of pressure on your post MBA aspirations, or basically you want to empower yourself with all the skill set out there possible, with the best degrees possible, with the best credibility, and everybody is doing the same. And they want to also potentially use this opportunity to upskill themselves, because some people have lost their jobs. You might have noticed that a lot of schools like MIT, Sloan, Columbia, I don't have other schools named on the tips, people who've been laid off because of the whole tech scenario that happened, they are actually offering them GMAT waivers, fee waivers, and whatnot. So business schools are also inviting and creating scenarios for you to comfortably apply, potentially even bag scholarships. So if you have like a situation or a story to bring to the table, it might be actually a good time to put the best application out there and bag all the waivers possible out there. Having said that, for the economic unpredictability, we've been reading and researching a lot about it. Is there any impact on candidates not finding a job within a certain set or window that they would otherwise? So far, we don't have factual information to support that. Okay, let's say in CRLBS or EASA, people are not able to find jobs. Yes, it's taking a little longer, but people are having enough potential, opportunities to find internships or contracts or consulting projects alongside until they can find or bank upon like a full-time proper job when the situation is much better. But maybe since Supriya, you are at school right now, NIP, you just graduated, do you see like a lot of economically like driven situation which is impacting the job market heavily compared to the previous years? And you can be honest for all of us.
Yeah. So Parida, that's something which one gets to hear a lot. My 2 cents on this is, yes, there has been an impact. It would be a blatant lie if I would say that no, everything is hunky-dory. That's not the case. I can give you a little bit of figures and statistics. Harvard Business School and MIT Sloan, when the current class of 2-year MBAs passed out or graduated, they typically had about 25 to 30% of their students who did not have jobs. About 30 to 40% people who did land a job in their first year of MBA or their second year of MBA got deferred. The companies told them to join 3 months or 6 months later, but they were paid and they were sustained. So there has been a little impact, but let me tell you that this is not something which would stop you from doing an MBA. There is no good time to upskill yourself. What you have to ask yourself is that, are you ready? Are you ready to take that plunge? Is your family situation, is your monetary situation in a state that you can take that decision of being away from work for 1 year or 2 years and commit yourself totally to a program? You will eventually find a job. It's just that you might not find a job the day you graduate, but maybe 2 weeks later, 1 month later. Like I still have classmates who haven't found anything, but they're not panicking because they know that they're interviewing, something is in the pipeline. But it's just that finalizing of jobs is taking a little bit longer than what it would traditionally take in a normal year. The reason for that is the typical churn which happens in every company every summer is not happening. A lot of people are not leaving because of uncertainty. Therefore, the empty billets are not coming up. Therefore, the interviews are not having. So it's a cyclical thing which is happening. And on the consulting side also, when the chips are down, companies would much rather spend that money in retaining their talent rather than going and buying advice from consulting firms. So consulting firm recruiting is also at a low. I wouldn't say it's an all-time low, but yes, it's lower than what one had seen in the last few years. But then it should not bother you. I mean, you have your goals set in mind. You know what you want to get out of this MBA. If you don't land a job immediately on graduation, be patient. You'll get something good in a month or two, and you will then get going. So I don't think that's a decision factor. And this recession is just coming and coming, but it hasn't reached. And I think by the time you land up to do your MBA, people will say that, oh, that was a false alarm, and it was just a kind of a reset after COVID. And mostly it is the FANG companies which have been affected. So if you're someone who's coming from an IT background and again going into IT, then I would say that you need to be a bit concerned. But others, all other industries are flourishing. I mean, business is happening as usual. So that's what I can make out sitting here.
Yeah. And again, like it depends on the industry, the function, what kind of opportunities like you're seeking after an MBA. Again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. For example, IP was very comfortably, and thanks for sharing those stats, IP. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known that. I was at INSEAD 2 weeks back, and I was talking to the admissions director about the stats around the whole economic crisis. But there was no factual or statistic information shared anywhere. So no matter how good the school is, I know schools also don't want to really openly come out about it, and there's no like hard evidence out there for us to grab hold of and say, okay, whether this is the right decision or a wrong decision. So I'd say go by the industry choice that you're making, the roles that you're looking for. Try and study that a little bit so that you can position yourself better in your MBA application as well as for the future. And start networking already before you even make it to the business school. You have to understand that in the business school world, it's all about networking. We know a couple of candidates who have not been placed after LBS, but they are doing, because UK has, I think, opened this 2-year visa thingy that you can stay back for 2 years and you can really work. So what it is, basically, you can leverage that in your favor. And there are a lot of opportunities across the globe like that. You get on a contract with, let's say, Unilever, and this person is on a contract with Unilever for 1 year, which is ideally something that they cannot sponsor your visa, but that you're more like a full-time person working for them. There are hacks in the system which can be figured out. If visa sponsorship is a problem, you figure out another way to do that. But the network itself is, especially when you go to a top business school, is so solid that they will help you figure out the hacks around the system, whatever the system is. So yeah, and make your geography pick based on where you see more opportunities coming in. So I know the question was around Germany. So Germany against what? Is it just Germany? Then you have to go, and Berlin is the space where you have the most jobs, especially English-speaking jobs. Germany, I'll be concerned if you don't know the language at all, if you're not going to Berlin or Munich. So maybe you need to start thinking about that. So we can always have more. Maybe, guys, we won't be able to tackle all the questions till the end, but we'll try to address as many. If they are untouched, I'd personally be happy, and our profile experts, even Supriya, all of us will be happy to have a one-on-one session with you later. So you can reach back to us on the email. Okay, let's take Nihal's question. Nihal, go ahead.
So my question is, working full time and, having so much of limited time for the application process and the entire journey, it needs a lot of research to actually find the perfect match for the school where you want to see yourself, right? It's school X or school Y. You want to drill down, go through them, be pretty sure that this is what is the match and this is where I want to see myself. How did you arrive at that conclusion part of it? Because there's about, if you look at the US, there's about 20 good schools. Then if you go into Europe, London, so there's many schools. How did you arrive at that part of it? How much time did it take? What was the process around it? The other thing is, through this entire drilling journey, right, for about 4 months, 6 months, for some it could be longer, who are still planning to take an exam, what kept you motivated and going, right? Burning that midnight oil, or whatever it is, and what kept you going all this while?
Nihal, that's a very, very deep question, very difficult to answer in a short frame of time, but I think let me answer the second part first on how I kept myself motivated. So, coming from the defense forces, you're trained in such a way that once you have your mission very clear in mind, you see yourself there, you put in everything to reach and achieve that. And for me, this transition was very important. I was moving from one organization which had been my home for my entire life. I'm a very traditional I come from a very traditional military family. I was the third generation going into the military. So there were a lot of family pressures also not to leave and blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of pressure from the military also to not let me go. But I'd set myself up for this, and I'd set my aim very clear that I need to get into a top tier business school. And now the second part is the shortlisting process takes time. And that is actually where people like us consultants come in with our experience, with our understanding, with having worked with multiple candidates, having understood the dynamics of the schools and also the industry. I think that is why working with someone who has a better understanding of things, who has a larger perspective, a very 20,000 kind of view of the entire process and the entire ecosystem helps a lot to use him as a sounding board throughout your aspirations, your ideas, and your dreams, and let him help you not figure out for you, but help you think in the correct manner. And that really helps in the school selection. There is no perfect school selection. At least this is what I feel. You have to be a bit flexible on that. You may not end up in your dream school. So expand your dream of 3-4 schools. Look at yourself being in one of those schools. Okay. To put all your eggs in one basket is not the best strategy to go forward. You may have your top preference schools, and then second tier schools, and then certain backup schools also. Okay. Typically the top 10 or 12 schools have the same or similar brand value or similar pedigree that they offer to you. So by being too selective, you're only harming your own chances of success, and you're also putting yourself behind in time in terms of your time slot or your time horizon of achieving certain milestones in life. So be a bit more flexible. Think of it as selecting a pedigree or a level of schools that you want to go along with the geography, and not just a specific school that I just need to get into Harvard Business School, otherwise it's end of life. That's not how it will work, and that is not how you should be even thinking about it. All the top schools bring in a different set of qualities in their business leaders, which the business world loves. And the difference between A, B, and C is very less. Trust me. The lecturers or the professors also move from one business school to the other. You might find that someone who was teaching for 20 years in a particular business school, then moved and started teaching in another business school. So it's not that some business school will really start teaching you something out of the world. The curriculum is mostly the same. It's just the clubs, the community, and the ecosystem which is there, which should align with what you want to do. Like I said in one of the previous discussions, if you're looking into entrepreneurship, there are certain schools who do a better job than others in entrepreneurship. If you're someone who's from a finance background who aspires to be a CFO of a very big company, then there are certain schools who really help you develop that skill set. That is how you should be thinking about it.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, even when you end up with, let's say, 2 schools and you got an admit, what made you select one over the other? Being very specific, was it something that was coherent or resonating to you, one of the CSR initiatives of the school, or what exactly did you look to, when you have 2-3 admits, what makes you make that choice that, okay, X is the school and I reject Y and Z?
I would suggest that if you have the time and the resources, you should visit those schools. Being on campus really clarifies all of these questions. You will get a feel, it is something like buying a house. When you go house hunting, there is one house when you enter, you feel that this is where I need to stay. There is a vibe which comes from that house. Similarly, there's a vibe on the campus. You speak to people there, you attend a couple of classes there, you go around, you sit in the cafe shop outside, and you hear discussions happening of students. You will automatically be able to make your mind. That is one hack which I would suggest. The second also is a lot to do with your geography. When I was applying, I had a choice between the East Coast and the West Coast in US itself. And since I had been on the East Coast, I had a bit of a preference. MIT does have a very strong veterans community, and the entrepreneur base is good. So everyone will have different factors which will come together to help you decide. And trust me, as you go forward in the process, a lot of clarity on those aspects will also start coming in. That's why, like Paridhi and others said, this introspection which happens over the next 3 to 4 or 6 months of your application brings a great deal of clarity at the end of the process.
That's perfectly said. Thanks, IP. I'd like to hear, Supriya, about your view as well.
Some of are running out of time, but
okay.
I can
okay, no worries.
I can, no, absolutely. Supriya, your last thoughts, and after that we'll wrap up, please.
All right. So I would recommend going with a very structured approach in this so that it kind of takes out the chaos from it. You know that you covered all your bases, and like what IP said, then you're making an informed decision. So for me, how I went about it is what my preferences are and what my non-negotiables are. And now that comes under different categories: geography, post MBA goals, kind of city I want to live in, the fee I would like to pay, the scholarship I can get, my family, closure to my family, the professors. For instance, I was very like Ashwath Damodaran teaches at New York University. Then nowhere else you'll get that course. So all of these, create a list of references for you, which brings a lot of clarity. When you pen them down together, you would realize that there are certain school that falls into the bucket, and that's how you create your school list. And then, I mean, obviously, yeah, we are here to help you. All of the people who have a great knowledge about the school values, school preferences, and everything, they would provide you with much more insights and use them actually as the sounding board to make a sound and informed decision. So that was my approach, was very structured in the sense like how I want, what my preferences are and what my non-negotiables are. And that's how I went with it. And then after getting the interview invites, after getting the admits, how I decided, like, it was a good way to talk to people from the school, or like I couldn't visit the school, neither did I have time, nor did I have resources. So for me, speaking to people made me realize what the culture was there. There were certain differences in culture I felt in school, and I chose on the basis of a couple of factors, but the culture was one of the most important, like one of the most striking factors for which I chose my particular school. And that's how I went about it. So it was about knowing what you want. And that begins with you, that begins with your list. And as much as you are clear with it, it helps.
Yeah, that should be good. Yeah. Thank you so much, Parini.
Yeah, I'll just share closing thoughts on school selection. One, yes, there are a lot of parameters, how Supriya laid out, how you should select schools, where you should apply at, which again, what IP mentioned, it should be hedged. Dream, realistic, and safe schools. They should not all be dream schools. You don't want to end up disappointed for yourself. That's one. Second, when you get through schools, which let's say if you get through 3 schools, I'm sharing somebody's story. So this is Kirthana. She got an admit from Fuqua, Ross, and I think the third one was Tepper. I can't remember which the third one was, but it was very clear for her, like the curriculum, the ecosystem that IP talked about, because she comes from a background that cares a lot about diversity and inclusion. And Fuqua, for that matter, speaks that value in its curriculum, in its ecosystem, the cultural atmosphere that they have at the school. So she was in one flick of a second aware that she's diversity and inclusion. She wants to do stuff about diversity and inclusion. Fuqua is the school. It took her just a days or a few hours to decide Fuqua over Ross, even though both were giving her or offering her equal scholarships, which is what will happen. And let's say if you weigh both the schools equally, you might want to pick which one is giving you more scholarship. For example, a candidate get into INSEAD and LBS both, but she got Laidlaw scholarship at LBS where she got 100% fee waiver. Why would you pick INSEAD no matter however much you like INSEAD? It's a lot of money you pay. So I, in a flick of a second, pick LBS. 2 cents on that, and we're 5 minutes, we've overshot, but thanks guys for staying, and thanks IP, thanks Supriya for such an insightful session, and thanks everyone, including Prakhar. I can see your face, so you've been a lovely audience tonight.